I'm the Hypnosis Without Trance guy. When I created that model, what I was saying is what I was taught about hypnosis seemed to be wrong. That there is a specific state called trance, that when somebody was in that state, they were then able to manifest these things called deep trance phenomena upon suggestion. And also that that specific state could be spotted through trance analogues, certain things you could see, shifts in people's physiology. All of this just seemed to just not be true. I would have people manifesting the trance analogues who couldn't do any of the hypnotic phenomena, the deep trance phenomena. Go figure. There's the trance analogues, they seem to be in trance, and yet they cannot manifest the deep trance phenomena. I'd have people exhibiting no trance analogues, there having been no induction, and yet they're manifesting deep trance phenomena. So hence hypnosis without trance. So people were trying to use trance as a label for something specific and definable in a scientific sense. I am going to use the term trance here in a completely different way, in a poetic way. Because trance is a powerful word from a poetic perspective. It impacts people in a certain way. They have a certain sense for what that might mean. And people they often say, you know, I was in a trance, I don't know what I was doing, I was just in a trance. Because the experience of trance for most people is when something goes away. And what tends to go away when people experience what they would generally call a trance is everything else about who they are, other than what they're experiencing in that moment, which is often their volition, their will. It might be their wisdom. It might be the quality of their thinking. It might be the ability to take a different perspective, all sorts of things, but a whole bunch goes away. So what trance seems to be, or a good term, the way I'm using this here is a narrowing of bandwidth. And then there's a whole bunch that gets excluded. Now, in a sense, we live our lives through trances. I might be, I could suddenly go into a worry loop about something. Right? I can go into a worry loop, start worrying. Oh my God, what if such and such happens? And when I start worrying, it's like the tunnel closes in, and the worried thinking becomes the totality of everything. And the fear I feel as a result becomes the totality of everything. And I'm only capable of thinking a very limited set of looped thoughts within that. I read a quote from Sherry Huber the other day, who was a Zen teacher. And she said, what was it? Worrying about your future will not help you have a better future. Worrying about your future will only help you have a future in which you worry about your future. And she's absolutely right, because she's talking about when you're in a trance, you get what you rehearse. The more you rehearse a particular trance, the more likely that trance is to perpetuate into your future. Of course, when people are worrying, they think that that worried thinking they're doing has some sort of functionality. They're caught in that idea, if I can get to the bottom of this problem, if I could just think it through, there's a problem to be solved, I've got to get busy thinking about how I'm going to solve it. But it's not done in a resourceful way. So in a sense, trance is like this narrowing. Boom. So have you ever had an experience where something's triggered you and you suddenly get caught up in a particular response? Name something that's like that for you.
Road rage.
Huh?
Road rage.
Road rage,
Yep.
right.
What are those tossers doing?
So what happens to you?
I just become intent on passing them.
Right.
And giving a signal.
Mm.
Not a nice signal.
Not an indicator signal.
No.
Yeah. Would that be what Stephen Gilligan calls the Irish finger signals?
That one.
Yeah.
You know.
So road rage, there's a perfect example, okay? So as you sit here now, you may be able to reflect upon it. I mean, it even looked, did you see Paul's physiology shift a bit? It almost looked like you started to enter the trance a bit, the content of it, the reality time. I'm not saying you were all the way in, but it's like your eyes kind of went, and a certain fierceness came about your person there in the moment as you thought about that. So when Paul does road rage, everything else about Paul goes away. Right? Paul has a phenomenally rich resource set, has an ability to think about things in many different ways, in a variety of different ways, right? But when Paul does road rage, where's that gone? Boom. He's in a trance. He's in a reality tunnel. He's in a loop. So who else has got one? What's yours, Adam?
Mine's to do with particular personal work, and it's sort of like a feeling of inferior, and sort of this automatically sort of feel inferior, and sort of like I'm going to feel, no matter what it is, I'm going to get told off, and sort of it almost feels sort of like to close down.
Yeah. You see that one? You see, Adam's showing us the physiology. Because there's another thing that interestingly happens, is there's always a physiological shift. We're going to look at this. There's always a physiological shift. There's a particular physiology involved with every trance. Right? We often neuromuscularly lock around, a particular perspective. Which is interesting, because if you think of the full range of who you are being represented in movement, there's any way you could move, but you don't. When you hit a trance, there will be a physiology that you will lock around. There's a good chance with that one, there's probably what you might call an age regression involved. I bet you're not feeling like you as an adult in that moment, are you?
No.
Right.
No, definitely not now.
Okay? Because this trance wasn't originally formed when Adam was an adult. We get these trances built, they have our little structures, and they're there waiting for us to pop into when the trigger is right. But it's not really changed. The structure of it, the underpinning probably hasn't changed for years. Right? So this is a particular personal work?
Yeah.
But you've experienced it elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes we're lucky and it may be one person, but it probably... What's it like for you? Is it like... when was the first time you remember feeling a feeling like that?
As a child, at school, at the primary school, and it feels bizarre, and I feel it now, sort of this shrinking feeling like, literally want to go on the high, sort of feel like I'm just stuck in.
So that's a pretty typical thing, because we'll build a trance state, often young, and it doesn't get changed. We can grow, we can evolve way beyond the psychology that created it. And yet it sits there as a little hived off thing, waiting for the triggers, and we collapse back in. And we lose touch with all of our adult resources, with our expanded transcendent self. Transcendent self, transcendent self. Right? But we collapse in. I love the term reality tunnel, because that metaphor, when you're in a tunnel, it directs attention one way only, and then there's everything else that's outside of the tunnel, which is excluded. Now, of course, when you're inside of that, the thinking is just about the same as it was when it was formed when you're a kid, right? So you can't think your way out of it from the inside out.
No.
You can't. It cannot be done. Because the very capacity that you need to get out of that is excluded from it. Hence the reason the trance runs.